Okay, welcome to the Sunday Shop Update. Today we're going to be talking about cutters, adjustable groove cutters you can put on a sliding table saw or panel saw, universal cutter blocks where you can add a variety of knives and even have knives custom cut and made for you, cutters for taking off large amounts of material with bearing guides similar to massive routers, and adjustable groove cutters of various sizes for your spindle moulder. So let's get stuck in. So let's get started with these smaller ones which fit on a spindle moulder. Now the principle is the same for all of the groove cutters. There's two plates really, and they're adjustable with spacers. You've got a knife on this plate and a knife on this plate, and then there's an edge knife here for scoring, just to stop any tear out. If you break them apart, you can actually see there's a series of spacers, and they come in all different sizes, and you can stack those up between the two cutters. They do have a maximum and minimum cut limit. There's usually a large and a small. The small ones usually go from around about 7 or 8 mil to about 15 mil. The larger probably starts around about 12 on average and goes to about 20 or 24 mil. So as I said, these go into a spindle moulder. Whereas this bigger one here, which you've seen me using on many builds, this actually fits into a sliding panel saw, which I'll show you in a moment. And this one here can have a variety of cutting blades added for tongue and groove or shaping things like staves on a hot tub. And so things like this, which is normally what you'd see on a planer, these are great because they can cut really thick material, 80 millimeters this way. They can all of the shapers can have a variety of a bearing added, and then a guide plate, guide ring. So for instance, even this big one can have a guide ring, and you'll see this will be able to trace off of a template or a mold, and then you use the same bearing. You just use a different guide ring, smaller guide ring, same bearing. So very good, cost effective once you've got the system in place. And then again, up to 80 millimeters of cut, tracing your material. So a quick look at the Arbor on a spindle moulder. Very similar to a table saw, obviously mounted the other way. You have a variety of spacers you can just buy. If you're using a larger head like this, then obviously less spacers. And if you're going to put a smaller groove cutter on, you can just stack the spacers, also stack your bearing wherever you want it, and the Arbor can actually tilt as well, giving you much more flexibility. So very useful. So this is the one most people are interested in. So let's look at this. Now, you might notice that this silver section here on the back as well, I've actually had to have this modified because I don't actually have a Felder table saw. And what is quite unique about the Felder adjustable groove cutter is that it's just the right height to come up above the top of your table for doing your rebates. Now everybody else seems to make much bigger ones for huge spindle moulders or shapers, or smaller ones like this, where the actual Arbor's too small, there's no cutouts for your table saw pins, and it wouldn't actually come above the top of your saw to do any rebates. So Felder's quite unique in that. The downside is if you don't have a Felder saw, this probably won't fit on your saw because of the Arbor won't be long enough. So what I've done is I've actually had an engineering company rebate here to allow my Altendorf to fit perfectly in here, and rebate the back section, which I'll show you over on the saw, so you just get the right amount of cut depth. Now it wasn't cheap, it was about £150 to have the engineering work done. I also had to have the slots elongated on this particular one because Felder has a much closer pin set. I think theirs is 10 mil and the average is 20 mil for your breaking pins. Okay, so the Altendorf saw already comes with a spacer, maybe for a dado cutter, as you can see here. So I've actually had the back of this removed, and this will fit perfectly on here now. And then I've had the front removed enough to sit the locking ring on. So I worked it out that with the various rebates done by the engineering company, I can get a full 20 mil from the outside of this blade to the outside of that blade, giving me the maximum cut for that particular cutter. Really useful having something vertically mounted in a sliding saw. There's so much you can do for removing material quickly, rebates, etc., as you can imagine. The thing with shapers, the big thing is the investment. Buying the machine, they can be expensive, and buying the cutter block can also be quite expensive. But once you've bought those, it's relatively inexpensive buying the cutters. So this is a universal cutting block, and I'll put a link in the description to what this is. All of my cutters come from, if you're in the UK, they come from a company they're made here called Whitehill, and this book is pretty, you can see, has every type of shape, tongues and grooves, molds, and you can actually, at the back of the book here, there's a section, you can just draw any shape you like within the correct sizes and they'll make it at no extra cost. Or you can actually send in a sample. If you've got a piece of old skirting or a piece of old dado, you can cut that off and send it in, and they'll actually make you the cutter to fit. So once you've invested, you've got all of these different blades which you can fit, and you can see here the price. You have a cutter and a limiter. So it costs you about £38 plus 20, whoops, here, 38 plus 25 for a profile. Let's look at the one here. One of the joints that I'm looking at doing later. I quite like the look of that for a table. You can buy a set of cutters and limiters for that. They're 36 and 30, so £66, and you've got that, and they will knock out a lot of wood before you need them sharpened. Really, really good. So it's very versatile once you've got a cutter block. I'll put a link in the description to my cutter block. This is the one that I've started with just to get me going. 175, 55, 30. 55 here, 175 this way. The 30 is the Spindle. You can actually pick these up, made by Stark, on eBay if you're in the UK. If you look out hard on eBay, you'll find these, and they're about £125, I think, for one of those. And that would last you a lifetime. You're just literally changing those blades, which aren't expensive. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all my Patreons. It's just getting started. I think we're going to have a lot of fun on there soon, so thank you all so much. Thank everyone for all their support to the channel. Please ask any questions in the comments. I'll get to answer them as soon as I can. Until next week, see you later.